This should not be happening. The most dominant driver in Formula One just stepped into a Mercedes. Not in the future. Not in rumors. Right now. On the most dangerous track ever built. A track with over 170 corners, zero room for error, and a reputation for ending careers. And here's the part no one expected. His very first race there, he destroyed the field by seconds. Then lost everything. Disqualified. Gone. And instead of walking away, he came back even more obsessed. Because what he found at the Nürburgring is something Formula One can't give him anymore. Control. Freedom. Real racing. But this is where it gets bigger. Because this decision, this one move, is now raising serious questions inside the paddock. About Red Bull. About Mercedes. And about Verstappen's future. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why this moment might change Formula One forever. Subscribe now, because the truth behind this story is not what it looks like. Because while the rest of Formula One stood still, Verstappen did the opposite. He moved. Quietly. Deliberately. And in a direction no one saw coming. While teams were stuck in meetings, arguing over regulations, debating performance limits, trying to fix problems that shouldn't even exist, Verstappen walked away from all of it. No simulator sessions. No endless debriefs. No carefully managed media appearances. Instead, he chose a track that doesn't care about any of that. The Nürburgring doesn't care about politics. It doesn't care about budgets. And it definitely doesn't care about world titles. It only cares about one thing. Whether you can survive it. And that's where this story starts to open up. Because this isn't just a random appearance. This wasn't a last-minute decision. This goes back weeks. To a moment most people ignored. Mid-season. A small gap in the calendar. The kind of break where drivers usually disappear. Rest. Reset. Stay invisible. But Verstappen didn't disappear. He showed up somewhere else. Germany. No major announcement. No dramatic reveal. Just a quiet entry into one of the most demanding racing series in the world. And the intention behind that move is more important than the move itself. Because drivers at his level don't experiment. They don't try things. Every decision has weight. Every appearance has purpose. And this one came with risk. Real risk. Because the Nürburgring isn't just another circuit. It's over 25 kilometers long. A full lap takes nearly 8 minutes. There are corners you can't see. Sections you can't predict. And conditions that can change within seconds. Dry on one side. Wet on the other. Fog rolling in without warning. And traffic everywhere. Not 10 cars. Not 20. Over 100 cars on track at the same time. Different speeds. Different categories. Different intentions. This isn't controlled racing. This is chaos, managed by instinct. And that's exactly where Verstappen went. But here's where things take a sharper turn. Because when he finally got behind the wheel of that Mercedes GT car, something unexpected happened. He adapted instantly. No hesitation. No learning curve. Just speed. Pure, immediate speed. Fast enough to take pole position. And not by a small margin. By seconds. On a track where finding even one clean lap is almost impossible. That kind of gap shouldn't exist. Not here. Not against experienced endurance drivers. But he did it anyway. And that's when people started paying attention. Because this wasn't normal. This wasn't curiosity. This was dominance. But what came next mattered even more. Because the race itself told a completely different story. And what happened there is where everything begins to change. At first, it looked like control. Clean start. Strong pace. Everything exactly where it should be. But the Nürburgring doesn't allow comfort for long. Because just a few corners in, everything changed. An Audi appeared behind him. Closer than expected. Faster than anyone predicted. Filling his mirrors. Lap after lap. No breathing space. No margin. And suddenly, this wasn't a dominant Formula One champion leading from the front. This was a fight. A real fight. One where every corner matters. Every braking point. Every decision under pressure. And this is where something unusual happened. Verstappen didn't pull away. He didn't disappear into the distance like he usually does. He had to defend. He had to react. He had to think differently. Because in this environment, nothing is guaranteed. And for the first time in a long time, he was being challenged in a way Formula One no longer offers. Not by strategy. Not by pit stops. But by pure, relentless pressure on track. And that pressure reveals something. It strips everything back. No systems to rely on. No energy deployment tricks. No hidden advantages. Just driver against driver. Moment by moment. Corner by corner. And here's the detail most people missed. He didn't look frustrated. He looked engaged, focused, alive in the fight. Because this is the kind of racing that forces you to adapt instantly. You're not managing a race. You're surviving it. And just when it seemed like he had taken control again, when the rhythm started to settle, when the victory looked secure, everything collapsed. Not on track. Not in a mistake. But after the race. Hours later. The result was erased. Disqualified. Gone. And here's why that moment matters more than the win itself. Because it introduced something Verstappen doesn't deal with often. Uncertainty outside his control. In Formula One, everything is calculated. Structured. Predictable. But here, even victory isn't safe. Even perfection isn't enough. And instead of stepping back, instead of treating it as a failed experiment, he leaned in. Harder. Because that kind of setback does one of two things. It pushes drivers away. Or it pulls them deeper. And with Verstappen, it did the second. That disqualification didn't end the story. It triggered the real one. Because from that moment on, this stopped being a one-off appearance. And turned into something much more serious. Something planned. Something intentional. Something that leads directly to what's happening right now. And what he's preparing for next is on a completely different level. And what he's preparing for next makes everything before it look small. Because this weekend isn't the goal. It's the test. A controlled entry into something far more demanding. The 24 hours of Nürburgring. A race that doesn't just push drivers. It breaks them. Physically. Mentally. Relentlessly. Because this isn't about speed anymore. It's about endurance. Precision over an entire day. Driving in daylight, then darkness, then daylight again. No reset. No second chances. And here's where the situation becomes even more interesting. Because the car he's using for all of this changes the entire equation. A Mercedes GT3. Heavier. Slower. Less advanced. On paper, a step backwards from Formula One. But in reality, it demands something very different. No hybrid systems. No energy deployment strategies. No artificial performance management. Just mechanical grip, balance, and driver input. Everything depends on feel, on instinct, on reaction. And that's exactly what makes this so important. Because in Formula One right now, those elements are fading. The cars are faster than ever, but also more controlled than ever. More calculated, more restricted. And drivers, even the best ones, are forced to operate within tight systems. But here, at the Nürburgring, there are no limits like that. You either read the track correctly, or you don't make it through the lap. And this track is unlike anything else. Over 170 corners, constant elevation changes, blind entries that punish hesitation, and a surface that never feels the same twice. One section dry, another wet, another covered in shadows where grip disappears without warning. And then, the traffic. This is where things become extreme. Because you're not racing against 19 other drivers. You're sharing the track with over 100 cars at the same time. Different categories. Different speeds. Some significantly slower. Some suddenly faster. And all of them unpredictable. You could be entering a high-speed section and find a slower car exactly where you don't expect it. Or get overtaken at closing speeds that leave no time to react. This isn't just racing. It's constant decision-making under pressure. And Verstappen knows exactly what he's stepping into. Which is why he asked for something even more extreme. Night stints. The most dangerous phase of the entire race. Because when the sun goes down, everything changes. Visibility drops. Reference points disappear. The track becomes a tunnel of shadows. And the only thing guiding you is memory. Every corner. Every bump. Every braking zone. Stored in your mind. Because you can't rely on what you see. Only on what you know. And that's where true drivers separate themselves. But here's the deeper layer. The part that connects everything. Because this isn't just about preparing for a race. It's about what this experience is giving him. Something he hasn't had consistently this season. Freedom. The ability to push without limitation. To feel the car without filters. To race without interference. And once a driver experiences that again, it changes perspective. It resets expectations. It makes everything else feel different. And that's why this matters far beyond the Nürburgring. Because while he's adapting to this environment, while he's building confidence in a completely different category, the Formula One world is still watching, still questioning, still trying to understand what this means. Because this isn't just a side project anymore. It's becoming a pattern, a direction, and possibly a signal. A signal that something is shifting. Not publicly, not officially, but internally. Because drivers don't chase this kind of challenge unless something is missing elsewhere. And if that's true, then what comes next won't just affect Verstappen. It could affect the entire grid. But that only becomes clear once we look at what's happening behind the scenes. Because the biggest story here isn't on the track. Because behind all of this, there's a contradiction no one can ignore. While Verstappen is out there, chasing something pure, something raw, his Formula One team is doing the exact opposite. They're trying to fix problems. Complex problems. Problems that shouldn't exist at this level. Energy deployment issues. Performance inconsistencies. Moments where the car simply doesn't respond the way it should. And this is where the gap begins to show. Not in lap time. Not in results. But in feeling. Because a driver like Verstappen doesn't just want to win. He wants to understand. He wants to feel connected to the car. To trust it. And right now, that connection isn't always there. But at the Nürburgring, there's no confusion. No hidden systems. No unpredictable software behavior. What you feel is what the car is doing. Simple. Direct. Real. And that difference is starting to matter more than anyone expected. Because while Red Bull is working harder than ever to keep him at the top, they're also trying to keep him satisfied, motivated, engaged. And that's not as easy as it sounds. Because once a driver reaches his level, winning alone isn't enough. There has to be something more. Something that challenges him. Something that pushes him beyond routine. And that's exactly what he's finding here. But this is where things take an even more delicate turn. Because the team supporting him in this project is Mercedes. Not indirectly. Not symbolically. Directly. Technical support. Engineering structure. A full system built around performance. And that creates a situation Formula One rarely sees. Because while rivalries on track are absolute, off track, this changes the dynamic. Now Verstappen isn't just observing Mercedes from a distance. He's inside the environment. Understanding how they work. How they think. How they build performance. And that kind of exposure changes perception. Because once you see how another top team operates from the inside, you start comparing. Not intentionally, but naturally. And those comparisons? They stay with you. But here's where it becomes even more significant. Because this isn't happening in isolation. The timing matters. The context matters. Because questions about Verstappen's long-term future have already started. Quietly, carefully, but consistently. And now, this situation adds something tangible to those questions. Because it's no longer hypothetical. It's no longer just rumors or speculation. There is a real connection. A real working relationship. Already in motion. And even if this project has nothing to do with Formula One directly, it opens a door. A door that didn't exist before. Or at least, wasn't this visible. But we're still missing the most important piece. The part that ties everything together. Because this isn't just about Red Bull. And it's not just about Mercedes. It's about Verstappen himself. What he wants. What he's looking for. And what he might be preparing for next. Because everything he's doing right now, every lap, every decision, every risk he's taking at the Nürburgring, is pointing toward something. Something bigger than a single race. Something bigger than a single season. And when you finally see it clearly, you start to understand why this moment could change everything.